And welcome, everybody. This is Real Estate Talk, TGIF, episode 188. My name is Dave Finale. We've been doing this for 185 weeks in a row. And today, I have the great pleasure of having a friend that I've been a colleague with for years. And we had the same franchise for a long time. And his name is George Castro. We're going to be right back, and we're going to get rolling into one heck of a conversation. Stay tuned.
Real estate agent, are you looking to acquire clients consistently so you can grow your business and your income to live a great lifestyle? This is Dave Finale and the RE Skill Builder podcast.
And here we are. Mr. Castro, George, how are you today?
Dave, I'm doing wonderful. It is an honor to be here with you.
I'm excited that you're here, man. I mean, I have been watched you from outside. I mean, we both were in the Century 21 system for years, and you know, you were. I mean, think about this, man. Think about you, right? So you're a full-time broker licensed in New York and New Jersey over 30 years, right? Your company has done over $50 billion in real estate. You were one of the top, if not the top, Century 21 offices in the state of New Jersey, and you're in the top 1% in the Northeast as a real estate company. You've been involved with let's see what else we got involved with. We got you involved as a commissioner of the New Jersey Sports and Exposition Authority. You know, you've been involved in helping a lot of people aside from those in the real estate business. I am honored to have you on here, man. But I got one question before I ask you the first interview question, the first discussion. That question is really simple. This is called Real Estate Talk TGIF, and it's episode 188. 88 is like my favorite number of all because 88 is my birthday. Everybody remember that? August 8th, my birthday. Just remember that. Anyway, what does TGIF stand for?
You're not going to punch me on that one because I know the answer because I've been watching you for many, many months, your programs. Thank God is finale.
There you go, baby. Thank God it's finale, right?
And I am one of the few that know the answer.
Yep, that's right. One of the few. We've got some real estate legal royalty watching us today. And our friend Maria Gesualdi. There she is. Good friend, good person, good attorney too. So anyway, George. So you know what? You've been in this business for a couple of years now, just as I have, right? I mean, talk to me about, you know, why it started. I mean, like, here you are, you know, you come to this country. Why did you go into real estate? I mean, seems far-fetched, no, but talk to me about your real estate journey and how it's led you to where you are today.
It was a coincidence. I'm very close to God, and sometimes God shows you the path, the road, the direction of your life. You could call it destiny. You could call it coincidence. I call it destiny.
Right.
There is always a providential reason why things happen to you if you look even at the adversities as part of a plan to bring you to another level. And I came to the United States in 1986. My first job was at a part-time cleaning company, cleaning offices from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I was going to school from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Learning the language. And there was a lady that I used to give a ride. Her name was Otilia. And one day I didn't see Otilia anymore. She didn't need a ride. A few months later, I bumped into her at a supermarket. And I saw a totally transformed woman, very well dressed, high heels, beautiful. And I asked her, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm in the real estate business." I asked her many questions, accompanied her to her car. She was driving a nice car that back then, many years ago, only people who could afford to drive a car like that one uh, must have been, of course, in real estate. And that was my first, the first person that inspired me to look into that. So the following day, I found a real estate school with Mel Lisner, a fantastic, I call him a professor, not an instructor, because he's more than an instructor. He teaches. I got my real estate license, became a real estate agent for a company in Union County, and very rapidly I became a top producing real estate agent in 1991. I opened my real estate company, an independent brokerage. In 1994, I realized after the collapse of the real estate market that it was important in order to build a brand back then to be affiliated with a franchise. So
George, let's just say you just talked about the crash. Most people think that that's 2005, 6, and 7. They didn't live through what you and I lived through back in the late 80s, early 90s, and that's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Very similar. It was brutal. There were many real estate companies in 1991 after the crash of the economy and the real estate market that disappeared, were completely wiped out of the business. And many of those companies, if not all, were never able to recover or be able to attain the level of productivity that they had before the crash.
Right.
The crash. Similar that happened in 2007. But when you go through the crash of 1991, which was also brutal, you remember that.
Yep.
You learn. You become a gladiator. You become a survivor. You anticipate what could happen, which happened in 2007,
right.
Almost 15, 16 years later. And what happens with the new generation of real estate agents is they live by the day without planning for the future and without anticipating what could happen with the real estate market before the pandemic, after the pandemic, and so on and so forth. So I affiliated my company to this great franchise, Century 21, fantastic affiliation. In 2000, we became one of the top producing real estate companies in the state of New Jersey within the franchise system. In 2002, we became number one Century 21 office in the state of New Jersey. And a few years later, top 1% in the Northeast of the United States.
Right.
And I am very grateful to this day to my relationship to such a fantastic franchise company like Century 21.
Right. I mean, it was great, right?
It was fantastic. Then in 2007 happened what we didn't want to happen. The real estate market collapsed. The economy collapsed. The roof caved in for many people.
It did.
And you have to press the clutch, switch gears, and assume the attitude of how am I going to survive through this? And in 2022, here we are doing a lot of things, empowering real estate agents, training them, coaching them, so we can attain the success and the accomplishments of the past before the collapse of the real estate market.
So George, talk to me about, the ascent into, being in real estate, number one, and then opening your own brokerage, and then going to Century 21, and then 07 and all that crap that's happened over the past 15 years. What do you think, if I had to ask you what was like 1, 2, or 3 things that kept you going and has kept you at the top of the heap all through these years, what would that be?
After the collapse of the market or before?
The whole thing. What would that be? What do you think?
Discipline is important. The problem that I see with many real estate agents and brokers is that this business is so generous that 2, 3, 4 commissions allow you to put gas in your car to pay your rent or your mortgage, to pay for your cellular, and you leave some money to live comfortable, that many people became very complacent. I was in the Navy for 3 years. I learned the discipline of waking up early, beginning your day at 5 in the morning. That's why I see every time that you have your live appearances at 6 in the morning while you're doing your daily exercises.
That's right.
I log in to see your inspiring messages, Dave, which I actually have to confess I use in many of my trainings with my agents.
Thank you, sir.
So I learn a lot from you.
I'm humbled.
And discipline is important. The day begins at 6 in the morning, the latest, not at 11 a.m. or 12 noon.
Right.
In real estate, you never know when that opportunity is going to land on your lap. And I can tell you stories of opportunities that I took advantage of that happened on holidays, 4th of July, Memorial Days. Discipline is absolutely important. And stay close to God, my friends, because in what relates to me, I'm very close to God. I pray. I am one guy that prays every single day, communicate with Him, and look forward for a positive and productive day.
So when we talk about we're having an echo here. What do we hear? Okay. All right. Cool. So we talk about coaching, and both of us are coaching our agents, right? And we've had a great discussion on this earlier in the week. And talk to me about the difference between coaching, training, all this other stuff, and how you built your businesses through bringing in agents, because you've always had great agents that have always built great businesses. Talk to me about the structure that you set up in your company that way.
Many of those who remember Vince Lombardi, for example, Vince Lombardi was brought to coach the Green Bay Packers back in the late 50s, early 60s, if I'm not mistaken,
right,
when the NFL was about to take the franchise away from them. This is a coach that understood, number one, discipline, that understood that every player is a good player. Number one, if you give them the opportunity to be a good player. And number two, if you coach them, and coaching is different than practice. Practice is what you do every day. Coaching and cross-coaching is what you do to correct the mistakes of the team, to develop the strategy so that the team as a team win with the individual performance of good players. So I understand that very well. I take the training of my agents very seriously. Many people, for example, think I'm going to go to a 30-day training. That's why I appreciate that coaches like you, like Tom Ferry, like Grant Cardone do, which is you have already been able to become a real estate, a very productive real estate agent. Now the goal is to make sure that you maintain that level of productivity, because this business, Dave, you and I understand, is very is about emotions. One real estate transaction, for example, can take a real estate agent out of business. Just one real estate transaction. The difficulties, the challenges of the real estate transaction. And one of the things that I do when I coach my agents is make sure that, number one, they didn't forget what they learned before. Number two, that they keep their emotions in check. Number three, you hold them accountable on a daily basis. And number four, you remind them, I want you to accomplish this. You need to help me do that. And then you correct their mistakes so that they could say, I never thought about that. You're absolutely right, George. I'm going to put that into practice.
Right. Right. So you mentioned training, coaching. We also have talked about cross coaching, which you talked earlier. We talked about you just mentioned it quickly. We talked about it the other day. Talk to me about what you mean by cross coaching and how that has affected your business and your agent's business as well. You talked about training and coaching, two different things. So hit me with that, please.
I always answer the calls of my agents. I always tell my family, I always answer the calls of my wife, my kids, and my agents. Anytime that an agent calls you with a question, it's an opportunity for a broker like me or a coach of my agents like me, not only to answer the question by telling them what to do, but also by taking that as an opportunity to coach them in a process of answering that question.
Yes.
So that next time they don't call you about the same situation. That's what I refer to as cross coaching. Sometimes, Dave, I get a phone call from one of my agents at 6 in the morning, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., Saturdays, Sundays. When I go to dinner with my family, I put my cellular on the table, because if I do not answer that phone when one of my agents call me, that could be the most important dinner or lunch of my life, because that answer that my agent didn't get and the opportunity for them to be cross-coach would result in them losing that sale or that listing because they may be in front of the client. So cross-coaching is what you do every single day to develop the muscle memory, as coaches in sports call, so that they don't forget and they're being reminded daily, this is what you have to do. And let me coach you on the process.
So when you talk about what you've just talking about is a process that a lot of agents that I try to work with, a lot of agents, and I call it, and it's called throughout the industry, active listening, right? And what you're actually doing is you're hearing what they're saying, and instead of giving them an answer, you're actually asking them a question, right? You're asking them a question so they can self-discover it on their own. I personally believe that that's where coaching needs to be, rather than say, okay, what do you want to talk about today? Because look, you and I have been coached by lots of different people, and we've also been coached by the greats, right? And it's a matter of saying, okay, so you got to do this, this, and this. How are you going to approach it? Would this work for you? Would that work for you? And that's exactly what you're talking about. I mean, as you say, you can coach, you can be a sideline coach, and it also has a lot to do with cross coaching, right?
I like to be a sideline coach. Anytime that I speak with an agent and I interview an agent, I always ask them, do you like sports? And they tell me yes. What type of sports do you like? Sometimes they tell me baseball, sometimes they tell me basketball or football. Then I ask them, what team do you like in baseball, basketball, or football? They tell me the name of the team. And then I ask, anytime that you watch a football game or a basketball game or baseball game, where do you see the coach? And in basketball, of course, they tell me the coach is always on the sidelines. And then I ask, what is the coach in the sidelines doing? The coach is communicating with their team. He's yelling at the team, or he's timing out so that he can comfort with his team and develop a strategy for the next 5 seconds or 5 minutes that are left in the game. And I tell them that is exactly what I am for my real estate agents, a sideline coach. I'm not, and I'll tell you this, Dave. I always tell my agents, do not refer to me as my broker. I happen to be a real estate broker because it is a legal requirement for you to engage in any real estate activity.
Right.
But anytime that you refer to me as I am a coach, when you introduce me to any of your clients, and I do it because I'm very proactive, they introduce me as, let me introduce you to my coach. I like that title better.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, throughout the years, I'm sure people have said boss, they've used that word. I never really cared for that because it meant that I was, I would tell them what to do. And we live in an independent world, right? And that's, I mean, I think one of the problems with brokerage models, as you and I have seen, right? And it's the way our business, and I want you to talk a little bit about the evolution of our business. And it's come out of the evolution of our business has come out of collapses. It's come out of 91 and 2007, and actually we had the past decade of 10 to 20 as kind of like a floater. It was kind of like a floater because in 07, 04, 05, 06, I believe that real estate agents became, I think the license should have said, instead of salesperson, it should have said order taker, because that's basically what they were. And what happened is that unfortunately real estate agents learn from other real estate agents, but they copy the wrong thing. People say follow a top producer, watch what they do and copy what they do. It does not say watch the top producer and go behind the scenes with them and watch everything they do. Watch the blood, sweat, and tears. Because if you saw that, you'd see that the peak is just the tip of the iceberg, as it is. So when we look at markets and we look at 10 to 20, and I think 2020 in March was like this time where you said before, a lot of people said, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, you did what I did. What not a lot of people did was they actually, as you said before, pressed the clutch and shifted gears. A lot of people tried to shift gears, but they ground the gears because they didn't press the clutch. You said that before, and I will always be using that from now on, by the way. So talk to me about the evolution of the business as you've seen it over the past few years.
The business is evolving rapidly, mainly because of social media. I teach social media, as a matter of fact, to my real estate agents. I always advise real estate agents to open your YouTube channel. It is important to make sure that every time that you upload something, make sure that what you upload is of value, so that the algorithms of Facebook or Instagram recommend what you uploaded. And actually, I used the word with you before during the pre-interview. Ego advertising is what is becoming prevalent for many real estate agents.
Right.
Anytime that you constantly and persistently upload things of value that benefit the industry or create a perception of what you are based on what you do, that is definitely going to bring you to the next level. But another important thing is always understand that the productivity span of 95% of real estate agents and brokers is 3 to 5 years. That's the productivity span. You remember, Dave, for example, in the 1990s, the top producers, they disappeared 5 years later, and they were replaced by a new generation of top producers that then were replaced 5 years later. This is a very dynamic business. Always make sure that you are constantly learning and putting into practice what is positive. And I'm going to give you one example, Dave.
Go ahead.
Before the pandemic, for example, the real estate was normal, as you put it during the previous interview.
Right.
The real estate agents, as the dynamic of the business began to change, and real estate agents were presenting offers $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 above asking price. They assumed a behavior that was not consistent, number one, to the best interest of the client who they represent, and to the relationships that they have to develop and maintain with the industry as a whole. And let me explain what I'm talking about.
Please, this is great.
Today, you submit an offer $50,000 above asking price. The listing agent then tells you, is your buyer willing to waive the appraisal, waive contingencies, the house is sold in as is condition, so on and so forth.
Yep.
I always tell my agents, please never ask a selling agent to ask the buyer to waive anything. The truth of the matter is that the property is worth what an appraisal indicates. Why are you going to change the dynamic of the real estate business that is anyway going to be short-lived? Because when the interest rates go up, prices begin to come down.
Correct.
These selling agents are going to remember those listing agents that mistreated them. I don't know if you agree with me.
100%.
But the real estate business should be based on ethics, proper behavior, a level of reasonability, and hey, thank you for presenting an offer. I appreciate it. I'm going to present all offers to the seller personally and objectively, and I'm going to review them with the client, and I'm going to determine with my client which one is the best offer. And that's how it should be, not asking people waive this or waive that, and bring certain degree of confrontation and antagonism to the industry that is highly unnecessary.
I think that's what we've seen a lot since since we've started coming out of the pandemic, and the summer of 20, we started seeing arrogance, right? I would hope to change that over to aggressiveness rather than arrogance, aggressiveness of the agents working together. For instance, one of the things I'd love to see is for buyer agents not to, well, it's almost like the animals have already left the barn, but instead of coming in and say, okay, you want me to waive contingency, I tell you what, this is my offer. It goes off the table in 24 hours. Let me know if you're interested, because then we're going to move on to another house, right? I would love to see that aggressiveness from more agents in the sales arena. And we're not seeing that because we're seeing a lot of people, different types of people get into our business, right? Our business, the business, right? We're seeing people that want to be investors. Oh yeah, I'm a flipper, or I can do this, I can do that. And it's just like, honestly, at the end of the 80s, the early 90s, or even during the 80s, anybody with a hammer and a pickup truck could be a builder, right? Mm-hmm. That's the way I saw it as I was growing up and growing up in the business through the 80s. That's what I saw, because it was easy to, oh, I'm a builder, I got lots of stories on that one, but that's for another day. But the dynamic of agents has changed from crash to crash to crash, or from crash to market changer. And a market changer here was 2020. Talk to me about, from what you're talking about, the over asking, the waiving of appraisals, all that stuff. Talk to me about the dynamics of real estate and the real estate agents since 2020, over the last couple of years. Talk to me about what you've seen there.
The business has become confrontational. I see the development of behaviors that are not consistent with how to treat another real estate agent in a fair fashion, so that in the process, the client that you represent is benefited. It's becoming very personal. It's becoming about giving constructive notice to the other agent who is in charge. I see these real estate agents, for example, even to me when I speak with them, the first thing that pops out of their mouth is how long they've been in the business. I've been in business, this and that. And I just tell them,
I do.
I tell them, I'm not going to tell you how long I have been in the business because that is not relevant to this conversation.
Not at
Let's
all.
get back to the conversation, and later we talk about what we have done, how many houses we have sold, and how long we've been in the business. It becomes a matter of who is in charge. The ego and the arrogance of some real estate agents, not all, there are some exceptions, is just brutal. But someone who have been in the business as many years as I have and as you have, we know that the productivity span of those real estate agents is going to be short-lived because eventually that type of behavior is going to catch up to you. You just have to be conscious of what is happening. But that is happening. Real estate agents, for example, that do not present written offers to the sellers because the listing agents take it upon themselves. This offer is no good. When the law says that every written offer has to be presented to the seller, or they text the offer.
You know, you're absolutely correct. I mean, and it all goes, and it all can stem off of that three-letter word that begins with an E that you use in advertising, ego advertising. It talks about that they're better than everybody else. You know, I just want to hit on one thing. When agents would tell me, like when I had my brokerage, when agents would call up to complain about somebody else or whatever, or complain about one of my agents or say, you got to get this done. They tell me, well, I've been in the business 20 years. I would always say to them, congratulations. That would always be my response. Why? Because it's irrelevant. I've been in the business. I figured this out. I thought it was 5. It's actually, I've been in the business parts of 6 decades. That makes me an old you know what, right? But the point is that I've not been in the sales business those 6 decades. I've been in building. I've been in development. I've been in leasing management, property management, development, actual building myself with a hammer and stuff, but I've been in the entire real estate business spanning 6 decades. My expertise might not have anything to do with the transaction that's being worked on at that time. So let's try to work together because you don't know more than the next. You know what I mean, George?
The other thing is, one day I told one real estate agent, the real estate business is like being a pilot. It's not how long have you had your pilot license, but how many flying hours you have.
Right, exactly. And it's also, you could also say how many hours are on the engine too,
Absolutely.
How many hours that we have on our individual engines. But, going with that, you talked about the dynamic of agents and it's basically attitude that we're looking at. And it's almost like entitled, I see a lot of agents, as you said, there's a 3 to 5 year cycle. And I think there's also a 3 to 5 year cycle for most agents coming in and leaving. There's an arrogance about not all the agents, look, you know what? I've had the pleasure over the past 4 years to work with people I couldn't work with before when we were in the franchise, such as people doing for this year. 21, I've worked with people doing 1,700 plus transactions, $500 million, $700 million, $1 billion in real estate sales in a year. When we were coming up in the ranks, those numbers were that's not possible. That was it was a joke. I could do billions. Now it's real, right? And it's not because of inflation, because there really was not a lot of inflation from the 80s to the 2010s. The inflation's happened over the last few years. But, when we look at our business and we look at the strive against one thing, my objective when anybody I talk to is to take them out of mediocrity, is to take them out of, that they're stuck or they're new or whatever, right? So when we talk about building an agent's business, what would be one thing that you think every agent needs to do in order to stay on top and to scale?
Learn and memorize a script. This is a business of scripts. And for example, when I get new real estate agents, I tell them, here's the script, sit right there. I'm going to listen to you. And I'm going to begin making the corrections according to what tone of voice you're using, what voice inflection are you using. Always be scripted. And always I remind my agents, people in the real estate business, they don't buy houses, they buy monthly mortgage payments. They don't buy houses, they buy numbers. Right. If you know how to explain the numbers, if you know how to calculate what the bottom line and out-of-pocket payment is going to be after in a two-family house, they collect the rent, what are the tax benefits and the tax write-offs of the of home ownership, the interest and the property taxes, that's when you're going to start selling houses. Back when we got into the business, Dave, you remember that cellulars didn't exist.
Right.
We had to carry a bag with 25-cent coins in our car. And when someone beeped us, we had to pull over, get into a payphone, and in many instances, spend 45 minutes, an hour on the phone. In the middle of December, January, February, after 1 hour, you could not even walk into your car.
Yeah, you were so cold, right?
You were totally frozen. And we were very diligent, very professional. Back then, to run the credit report of an agent for you to get the credit results would take a week or 2 weeks. So right. Real estate agents, Dave, were more proactive in sitting down with the client with a notepad and a pen and a calculator and ask a specific, objective, even to some extent, inquisitive questions to determine the credibility of the client that you had across the table from you.
Right.
Because you could not wait 2 weeks for the mortgage representative to tell you this buyer is a go. You had to make that determination by virtue of asking questions today. And I see that in today's real estate industry, agents are shifting or kicking the can down the road by relying on someone else to ask the questions because they feel intimidated or afraid of asking those questions. This business is not about what you say, as Floyd Whitman used to say. It's about what you ask.
That's right. Right. Floyd Whitman. There's a name from the past, and Floyd and his stuff is still around. When we're talking about helping agents build and to scale and to go forward, you talked about scripts. So I believe that everything we do is a script. I mean, this broadcast, while the questions are not scripted, I have a pattern that I follow, and I have followed from the first one I did way back 3.5 years ago, right? So, but everything we say is a script, and you run across agents that say, "Oh, I don't like scripts. I don't like scripts." Well, what are you going to say? And then you listen to them on the phone and say, "Well, that's a script." Well, what are you going to say at an open house? I'm just going to greet them. Great, that's a script. And here is the thing that separates the pros from the pretenders is not even is being able to talk, and you and me know it's a script, but no one else does, right? So it's they're using a script. You don't know what you don't even know they're saying it, but that's what they're doing. And that's what I call that's called talking to someone as if they're your best friend, or as I like to say, Uncle Joe, right? You know what I mean by that? You get that, what I'm saying?
I'll give you a tip.
Go ahead.
I always, when I always ask agents, at least my agents, never ask the buyer if the buyer is working with another realtor. And I'm going to give you some tips that I know you will agree with me because you're a great coach, Dave. But this is a tip that if real estate agents that are watching this program put into practice, you're going to make a lot of money. Number one, you never ask the buyer if the buyer was pre-qualified. Have you been pre-qualified? That is an ugly question. I call it a trigger question that antagonizes the recipient of the question. I always ask, and by the way, this is my dialogue. Have you had an opportunity to sit down with a mortgage representative to determine how much buying power you have? It is the same question.
Absolutely the same question.
But you're using the right language. I always tell my agents, do not ask, are you working with an agent? I always tell them, you need to use pain points to be able to convert. And the first question, if you're conducting an open house, is how long have you been looking for a house? Because when they answer the question, if they tell you 3 weeks, it is obvious that they're working with a real estate agent without you specifically asking, are you working with a real estate agent? Then the second question is, how many houses have you looked at? And they are going to answer probably 10 or 15 questions, 10 or 15 properties. And that's how you begin to use the pain points. You're working with a real estate agent that has shown you 15 houses. Probably the real estate agent that you're working with is not showing you the right houses.
That's right.
And the other question is, have you presented an offer on any of those 15 houses that you have looked at? Most likely the buyer is going to say, yes, I have presented offers. And then you ask, what has happened with those offers that you have presented? Well, they were not accepted. And the pain point is you're probably not working with a real estate agent that knows how to negotiate. I always advise people, Dave, when you submit an offer on behalf of your client to a listing agent, make sure that you follow up with a call, with a text, with a voice text, and I'm going to give you another one, with a video
text.
Because video texts are so powerful. The listing agent is going to be able to put a face with a voice. And if the listing agent is professional, and most of them are, they are going to appreciate the fact that you are following up and making sure that a voice is placed with a face and that you're following up to know the status or the outcome of your offer. And those are the listing agents that immediately identify you as someone who they want to do business with.
Absolutely. I mean, the scripting you just went through, the after offer scripting you just went through is so critical. And it's like I do a scripts and dialogues every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. By the way, everyone is invited to come. Just reach out, go on social media, go to my personal page, my other pages, and it's always there on Wednesdays where I post the link, and the links looks good forever. But I call it scripts and dialogues. It's not what you say, it's how you say what you say, right? So basically what you said was, are you pre-qualified for a home? Are you pre-qualified or pre-approved? You didn't use any of those words, but that's what you said. That was how you said it. So I said what to say, and that was how you said it. So clear, so easy, and it's conversational, right? It's a script, but it doesn't sound like a script. Purchasing power. We've been using that. It's like that phrase is a big fight with newer agents because purchasing, well, they pre-approved. That's all I need to know. No, what's your purchasing power? Because pre-approved is a number. Okay, their purchasing power is an attitude. right? It's a freaking attitude where, I can do this. I can do that. I got that power, right? So the word power is really cool. So when we're talking, we talked about the buyer. Now talking on the phone to, for prospecting and talking on the phone about, the same kind of thing. Are you gonna use typical scripts on a phone to a for sale by owner and an expired as well, or how are you gonna change that around, George?
The one that I use, and I was when I was an active real estate agent. Now I am an active coach of my agents. Mine was very straightforward. Good afternoon. My name is George Castro. I work with Premier Homes, a real estate company in Union County. I would like to schedule an appointment to preview your property. Would this evening be better, or would tomorrow at any time appropriate? Then the person would say, do you have a buyer? The answer is, I don't know. I haven't seen your house yet. I'm working with many buyers that are looking for houses similar to yours, but I would like to see your property first. Can I schedule an appointment for this evening, or would tomorrow be better for you? I don't want to work with a real estate agent. I always ask, may I ask you why? And they say, I don't need a real estate agent. I'm doing it on my own, but I'm willing to pay 2.5 or 3% to any cooperating broker. I always answer, I understand that, but how could I bring a buyer to your house if I have not even seen it? Can I meet you this evening, or would tomorrow be better? Because one of the things that I always insist is in closing for the appointment. Real estate agents wrongfully ask, when would it be convenient for us to meet? Of course, the answer of the buyer or the seller in this case will be, I will call you back.
I'll call you back, right?
Can we meet tonight in the evening at 6 p.m., or would tomorrow be better for you? You're forcing an appointment. That's number one. And I always keep insisting, and I hammer it, and I hammer it, and I hammer it, until eventually they agreed to allow me to see the house. And when I am there, I hit for the listing. Many real estate agents, Dave, they make the mistake of telling the seller, I have a buyer. And when you show up without the buyer, the seller gets upset. They ask you, where is your buyer? I always tell them up front, I have buyers that I'm working with, and that's one of the reasons why I would like to know the architectural distribution of your house to see if your house fits one of the buyers that I'm working with. Can I meet you at 6 p.m. today, or would tomorrow be better for you? And eventually, 9 out of 10, you get it. I always say this, for sale by owners are the easiest listings to get, as long as, number one, you use the proper dialogue, and number two, you understand that every sale happens between the 5th and the 10th follow-up, not between the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. If real estate agents understand that arithmetical formula, they're going to get a lot of listings, and they are going to be for sale by owners, which are the easiest listings to get.
Okay. So I've got a couple of things I'm going to ask you. Number one, I think it's genius that you use the phrase, I need to see the architectural distribution of your home. I love that. And I will be stealing that, by the way. There's 3 or 4 things I'm stealing from you today. Love it. But I got to go into something, right? You talk about preview, that like to get the appointment, you hammer the getting the appointment. One of the things that makes it difficult for a lot of agents when they go for the preview question is that they get themselves in what I like to call the friend zone, where they talk so hard about previewing that home, it doesn't allow them to talk about listing of the home when they get there. What is the transition at the appointment that they need to make from the preview appointment to the listing appointment? How do you make that transition, or do you?
I make that transition, but I always understand one thing. I always go with the mind that most probably I'm not going to get that listing at that first visit, that I'm going to get that listing at the second visit or the third visit. So what I do is I show up to the listing, I tell them what I can bring to the table, and then I tell them I'm going to go back to my office. I'm going to do a price analysis. I don't call it market analysis. Real estate agents and real estate brokers are taught to use market analysis. I tell them price analysis because the word price brings some sort of adrenaline to the brain of the seller.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to meet you tomorrow here at the same time. So I'm scheduling my second appointment after the first appointment. And the price analysis, I'm going to help you analyze how you can maximize the potential of the sale of your property. Sometimes sellers ask me, how much do you think my house is worth? I never answer the question. I always tell them, I'm never going to put a price on your property. Let's sit down tomorrow. Let's go over what the market is reporting, and let's see how we can maximize your possibilities. Whether you lease with me or not, that's your choice. I'm here to help you. Another thing that I tell them is, or ask them, why haven't you listed with a real estate agent? And they tell me, I don't want to be tied up to a listing for 6 months, or I do not want to pay a commission. I always tell them, listen, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. List with an agent now. You don't have to list with me. But if you lease with any real estate agent, you're going to increase the chances of getting more money for your house. Because the network of real estate agents that are affiliated with the MLS are going to see your property, and they are going to move in the direction of your property. So lease with an agent. Of course, my intentions are I always go with the intention of not getting the listing so that I end up getting the listing, if you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're going there to get the information and to help someone. And your objective, since you're going the first time, you say you're going to go to the second or the third, you know you're not going for the listing the first appointment. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, your conversation matters. What I mean is that it doesn't matter that you don't get it. So you're not going for it. So there's no disappointment. You've already given yourself the no, so that you're able to be open to help them. And that is so very important. We talk about there's going to be more no's than yeses. And if we look at the conversion ratio of leads, it's 1 to 3% of the total number of leads you get in. But the ones you actually talk to is probably about 25%, meaning that if you're talking to 4 people out of 100, that would be 4%, but it's actually you get 1 out of those 4, it's 25%. So, the conversation is extremely important because it comes from a point of integrity, and it comes from a place of contribution, comes from a place of reciprocity as well. And that's the point that you make too, is it doesn't matter if you list with me or not. You need to hire an agent now because you'll do a lot better. Since you gave them that information, and since you said that, it seems extremely selfless for you to be giving. And one of the things that I know very, very well, having read all the books on it, is that you give not only to receive, you give to help, and that's what you do. That's great, man. I love that. I love that. So we're coming up on time now, George. How do people get in touch with you to talk to you more about your business, to talk to you more about what you got going on? How do they get in touch with you? I've got this, which is your website, I believe, right?
Yes, I'll give you my cellular. It's 201-522-7766, 201-522-7766. I have a YouTube channel, George Castro, Instagram, George A. Castro, and Facebook, George A. Castro. I get, if an agent from another office needs to ask me a question, I'd be very happy to answer those questions. I do not view other realtors from other offices as my competition, and we shouldn't be seen as such, because we are in essence partners. We're called brokers, meaning you have a product that I can help you sell, and I may have a product that one of your buyers may want to buy. So we should be working as partners, not as competition. So don't hesitate to call me anytime that you have any questions.
So you know what? I think we've gone through so many different things. We've talked about agents. We've talked about how they react. We talked about evolution of our business that you and I have seen through the 80s and 90s and 2000s. And we've also talked about simple scripts. And the thing about those scripts, and correct me if I'm wrong, man, these scripts are what you used 30 years ago, right?
Yes.
So, it's not what we're saying, it's how we're saying it. But the only difference is the way that we're bringing it forth, because 30 years ago, we didn't have video text. We didn't have text. You talked about getting a page, a beeper, right? And then you had to stop on the road and go to the phone booth. The biggest thing for me that helped me, instead of having to carry the quarters around, was having a calling card and knowing how to use it.
Yes.
That was something else. We had to dial into the phone. And anyway, but I'm dating both of us. So you know what? I want to thank you so much for being on. This has been a pleasure. We followed each other for years and years and years, and we are going to get together soon in person as soon as everything works out. I have two things left for this broadcast. The first one is the most important thing for me on the entire broadcast. George, how can I, Dave Finale, help you grow your business?
I'm going to tell you, actually, Dave, what we're planning to do. I own the Ritz Theater and Performing Arts Center in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Any of you can Google it, Ritz Theater and Performing Arts Center. We're organizing a real estate convention. We're bringing great influencers and speakers. And you, Dave Finale, are going to be one of our guest speakers. So be ready for it. Ritz Theater, beautiful place. Absolutely. I bought it in 1994. We renovated the place in between 2002 to 2010. It has a seating capacity of 2,800 people. Visit the Ritz Theater Instagram, the Ritz Theater Facebook page, the Ritz Theater website, and you will see how amazing this 100-year-old facility has turned into one of the best acoustic halls in the United States. So you're not going to need a microphone, Dave, when you speak to a hopeful audience of 2,800 people.
You know what? That's going to be probably one of my biggest honors. Thank you so much for that opportunity. I really do. And there's only one thing I got to do, George. I know you've been, you and I've been going back and forth, and you said, you needed to get the hat in order to come on. Well, you know what? I believe I'm going to personally deliver this hat to you over the next couple of weeks. I promise you that. George, again, thanks a lot. Stay on as we go out. We'll come back. Everybody, thank you so much. This conversation of scripts was a great lead into and segue to next week's guest, Jackie Kravitz of SalesX Training, who's worked with with Tina Cole and a lot of the huge agents throughout the country. And Jackie's going to be our guest next week. So thanks a lot, everybody, for stopping by and being with us. And again, George, thank you very much. And we're going to go out. We'll be right back. Everybody stay tuned for next week. And thank you for watching.
God bless you, big guy.
Thanks, man. Whoop, where are we going here? There we go. Our two handsome faces.